She continues to raise the hard questions that strike right at the heart of our nation. Live from the United National Congress social space, former Prime Minister and Leader of the Opposition, Kamala Prasad Bisesa.
I will fight for you. I always do until my heart is black and blue.
Thank you very much. Good evening, all. Members, friends, and family of the UNC. From the UNC, we want to say a very happy new year, a very blessed new year to all of you. I know we greet the new year always with hope and with optimism after the very difficult, challenging year we had in 2020. But the people of our land remain strong. They are resilient, and therefore we will continue to work to meet any challenges which we face in this new year. We are very thankful to have our health, and at the same time we pray for those who lost so much as a result of the pandemic in the last year. But we in the UNC, we are energized. We are ready to tackle the problems. We are ready to fight with you, alongside you, for peace, bread, and justice. That is what we stand for. So as we introduce our candidates tonight, the winning candidates, all five, we urge you, do not feel election burnout. Do not let election burnout keep you away from the polls. And I know you will feel it because we faced so many elections in a row, one on top of the other. But I ask you to come out because together we can send a very strong message to the PNM, the wicked, vindictive, shameless PNM. In the UNC, we have the plan, we have the vision to take our country forward. And together we can bring about the change we need. Together we can. I urge you, come out on the 25th of January in the 5 electoral districts. Cast your votes for the UNC, and whilst you do that, stand up for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Stand up for peace, bread, and justice, because we've lost all of that under the PNM. We've lost a peaceful country. We have lost justice in this country. You can look at what is happening with our stranded nationals. Total injustice being meted out, and I'll come back to that point. So when you stand up on the 25th, you don't just stand up to vote for a candidate for the UNC. You're standing up for all the people of Trinidad and Tobago. People remain stranded outside, whilst the PNM friends and family are coming in. They are being given exemptions to come into the country, but you know what? They're getting exemptions to leave the country too, do you know that? Whilst the country is on supposed lockdown, they granted exemptions for Delcy and her team. You remember that? Very early after the lockdown was initiated, they let Delcy and her team come in. Up to now, we do not know in God's great earth what they came here for. But we do know that shipments of oil left our country. We know Delcy came in, she was a sanctioned person. The aircraft she came in was a sanctioned aircraft, so they opened the borders to let her and her team come here. And I'm now being told that the permanent secretary in the Ministry of National Security was granted an exemption to leave the country on the 19th of December and an exemption to return on the 30th of December. What did he leave the country for? No government business is being transacted outside. In fact, everybody's using the Zoom and the webinar and using the technology. Why did this permanent secretary leave? And it is bad enough if any PS left, but good God, this is a ministry granting the exemptions. What personal favor was given to the permanent secretary in the Ministry of National Security? Is it true that this person left on the 19th with an exemption to go to the United States and came back in with an exemption to re-enter on the 30th? Seo Chung, why do you lie to the country? You said on the 30th of November, you talked about what was the policy, and you're coming now to lie that you never said this, but it's reported, and I will read what was reported. CNCG reported after Seo Chung did a media conference on November 7th And I read and I quote, government's priority remains getting nationals of Trinidad and Tobago back home on a first-come, first-served basis. First come, first served. How did Miss Rowley, daughter of the Prime Minister, who applied in November, get an exemption in November? Where was she in the first come, first served? What about all the persons who have applied in March, in April, in May, in June, July, August, September, October? How did this person jump the queue? Listen what the report says further. First come, first served basis. Whilst applying existing policies that have been previously stated. As such, exemptions and the granting of approvals will depend on the number of persons in the queue. So you had to be in the queue. And then you'll get first come, first served basis. Depends on the number of persons in the queue and are based on the quarantine space available. Now he's saying he never said that. So is that CNC3 report lying on you, Stuart Young? Did they lie when they reported this after your media conference on the 7th November? First come, first serve. People in the queue, but you have people jump in that queue, wasn't even in the queue, getting exemptions to come home. And is it true that the daughter of the Prime Minister, when granted the exemptions, I'm asking, because there's so much story out there, we need to know the truth. Did she also bring 8 friends with her? Is it that 8 other persons were granted exemptions? And who are they? Are they nationals? Were they in the queue? Did they come at the same time? And then you have our rental, our recusal man, Faris. His son as well. His son left granted exemption to leave and exemption to come back. So what is your policy? You have stranded nationals, man. Out there, people begging to come home. March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. People begging to come home for funerals of their loved ones. People begging to come home because they have sick relatives. They're not in the queue. But people getting to come home for Christmas. People getting to leave. That PS leave on the 19th, come back on the 30th to spend Christmas with his family. And you want to tell me that this is policy, this is what you are practicing, this is outright, not just discrimination, it's a violation of the human rights of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. And I saw in the newspaper over the weekend, they're talking about, lawyers are saying, well, you know, there's no breach of the Constitution because freedom of movement is not an absolute right. It is true, no rights are absolute. And their story is freedom of movement is, well, yes, everybody entitled, but we can't move at the same time because it will be chaos, true? So as you have the freedom to move, to go and come, yes, it has to be regulated in some manner because everybody, as I say, you have freedom of movement on the road, but if everybody on the road at the same time, chaos. But they're talking about freedom of movement, but it's a much more fundamental right that is being breached. It is a right to equality of treatment from a public authority. Talk to me about that. All the commentaries I saw talked about freedom of movement and no absolute right. But not one spoke about the right in our Constitution to equality of treatment by a public authority. The Minister of National Security and the Minister, they are public authorities. Why are you granting exemptions to your friends and family? Why? But this is what they do all the time, is it not? Several spoke with you, Wade and Anil and so on, about the procurement. I have spoken from this space to you before about the 92 times ministers of the cabinet, Faris and Stuart Young, had to recuse themselves because business was being transacted for their friends or family to benefit. Benefit from the taxpayers' monies. That's what was happening. And now they mash it up. Mr. Chankit has resigned. I am being told another one has resigned or is about to resign. Because they have totally emasculated, using the words of Mr. Chankit. Today I hail you, Mr. Chankit. You're a true patriot. You're a true patriot. And I agree with Anil. He's not a UNC. They will say, oh, well, he resigned because he's a UNC. But they took this procurement law from day one when we went to Parliament. We campaigned in 2010, look, we are going to bring proper procurement legislation. The JCC had given us drafts of a bill and so on. We took all those documents. We had a joint select committee in the Parliament. You know, the same PNM, led by the same person, Rowley, they refused to attend the JSC meeting. They did not attend. They never wanted proper procurement legislation. That's what it was. They did not attend. They went fighting and kicking and screaming not to attend the JSC meetings. And then when we had completed the work of the JSC, we brought the bill to the Parliament for approval of the Parliament. You know what happened? You know, they like to say they vote for everything we bring. Lies as usual. When we came to take the vote in both in the House and in the Senate, they abstained. They never voted for the procurement legislation. Never. It means they never wanted it from day one. And since then, what have they done? Every single budget, starting with their first budget, which they read in 2015, every single one. That would have been the budget statement for the year 2016, financial year. But they read that budget 5th October 2015. They promised to bring into full force the procurement legislation. 2015 budget, 2016, 30th of September. Moving down the line, 2nd October 2017, May 10, 2018, 1st October 2018, 13 May 2019, 7th October 2019, 5th October 2020, the last budget they read, 5th October 2020. And in every one of these, they promised that they will fully implement the procurement legislation. Never did. Never did. You hear lie, that is lie. Every single year you have a government standing in the Parliament lying to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And instead of fully implementing, what did they do? They have brought 3 amendments to the 2015 law. 3. The first was to deal with shortening the term of service of the persons to serve in the procurement board. Give them a shorter time. And yet not implemented. I think they were waiting for the years to expire so those fellows would go. I think they were deliberately holding it back so that the persons who had been appointed in 2018, their term would expire. In fact, some of them had to expire in this year, 2021. They shortened the term of office. They brought an amendment to deal with lands, state lands, again, weakening the legislation. Now they want to sell NP stations and so on as land, property. They fix it in a way now that their friends and family again will benefit from those things. They want to privatize the Port of Spain. To whom? Who will they privatize it to? What partnership will it again be? The friends and the family and the financiers, because you have removed these things from the procurement legislation. And the third set of amendments is the ones that happened recently, where, as they say, gutted, emasculated. They remove medical services. They remove legal, remove accounting, and so on. Why is the Attorney General recusing himself in the cabinet from a decision relating to a CT scan machine? Medical, that's medical. And then you come bold-faced and shameless to remove medical things. What medical interest does the Attorney General have in what? In what? Why did you move the VAT and other customs duties? You agreed to waive it so that somebody that the AG knows he's conflicted had to recuse himself from the cabinet. Why? Why? And you are so shameless. You want to talk about integrity in public life. You want to talk about transparency. There is no transparency with this government. None whatsoever. And Mr. Chankit, as I said, resigned. Well, let's see what happens next. But that's not the way to go, you know. We have to stand together. We have to deal with this wicked government. We cannot let them get a free pass and somebody resigns. Okay, that's great. But you know what? We have to band and come together. In this regard, I propose that the UNC join with other groups, that we have a webinar, like a roundtable discussion on this procurement legislation. We will not let it go. We will give you no support in the Parliament. None whatsoever. You could cry and weep and wail and gnash your teeth as much as you want. We will not support this wicked, lying government in the Parliament or outside the Parliament. In his own words, Dr. Rowley, in your own words, we will isolate you. We will isolate you for your wickedness and incompetence in governance. So there we are with the procurement, but I want to tell you about another piece of procurement now. We have now a vessel known as the APT James. You all know what that is? That's the boat coming from Australia to Trinidad. Again, one trip to Australia with the Prime Minister and his sidekick Young. And what? We go in and buy this vessel. You have the Coast Guard vessels down on the ground now. They can't get fuel. You will not look after them. You lied to the country. Siot Young lied in the parliament when MP Saddam Hussein raised a question about the repairs to the vessels. And they said nobody was here, and the people out, the dam men, the people from Holland to repair, they didn't come, and it was. And then we found out, wait. The embassy, no other than the embassy, but wait, we have people here. Then Siot Young came, we brought a matter in the parliament for breach of privilege by Siot Young for lying to the parliament. But before the matter could be raised and discussed, Siot Young came and made a personal statement, and Bob and Weave and paddled himself out of it. He lied to the parliament. There's no question about it. And in lying to the parliament, he lied to the country. He lied. So here we are now, APT James. They want to ensure that this law is so gutted, the procurement law, because it can continue to use your money, taxpayers' money, for the nefarious ends. They are the manufacturers of crisis, this B&M. They are. So they make up a problem. Then they come like the mighty savior, that they're going to solve the problem. So they crashed the sea bridge, remember? We had a boat known as a Superfast Galicia. Do you know how much we were paying per day for that, the Superfast? $117,000 per day. They run out the Superfast, they brought in the Cabo Star for $150,000. They brought in Ocean Flower to $185,000 per day. And now we end up with what? The Jean Lavalette, if I'm good in my French. This is the very now. They brought that in. You know how much we're paying per day? Do you know how much? $263,000 per day. Taxpayers' money. And all of that done without any proper procurement process. None of that done with any proper tendering. They just find this boat, a flat bottom boat, they tell us it's more for rivers than for oceans and for seas. $263,000 per day. You run out the Superfast Galicia at $117,000. You understand? Per day. Where's the logic in that? The only logic in that is some money passed somewhere. Any normal human being will not pay more than you were paying. What is the logic? They cannot answer, but they want to come and talk about what Dr. Munir spoke about there, that helicopter. Like Rowley just has an obsession with helicopters. An obsession from day one. He accused the partnership of using helicopters like bus and personal. It wasn't for that. That helicopter, as Rural told you all, was for national security reasons. Senator Damien tells us about the amount of Venice coming in right up there. Coast Guard right about. That chopper would have given us total surveillance of our borders. But no, spite, malice on their part. And now taxpayers will have to pay because they defaulted in terms of the lease contract that had been entered into. So let's go back to APT James now. You remember they are very boastful about this vessel. Eh? They think it's the best thing they've ever got, this APT James. You know how much they're paying for that? $500 million. $500 million. Wayne Mark in the Senate exposed them when he showed that Trinidad and Tobago had signed up to pay more than another country that had purchased the same vessel, or a vessel of a similar type. So let's go back to APT James. The vessel left the shipyard on its way to TNT, but it had to stop along the way. It's a long journey. And they stopped at Malta. And they had to go through certain inspections. Now, the minister said it was halted at in Malta because they had to wait for the winter storms to pass. Minister, I want to tell you, if this inspection document I have in my hand emanating from Malta for inspection of this vessel, whether these facts are true. That document states that on inspection, that there were not 1 or 2 deficiencies, there were 6 deficiencies of the vessels. 6 deficiencies of the vessel on this $500 million vessel. These defects in the vessel range from a lack of proper certification and documents to missing fire safety equipment, a lack of proper structural access points to vital areas of the ship. It was even discovered that the electronic charts that assist the navigation of the vessel was outdated and did not conform to current maritime codes. This is a great APT James, $500 million worth. Deficiencies, emergency systems, incomplete. Safety of navigation, not updated. Structural conditions, not as required. Fire safety, missing. Fire safety, missing. Fire safety, fire detection and alarm system, missing. Fire safety, personal equipment for fire safety, missing. Certificate and documentation documents, not approved. Can you believe this? Can you believe this is what we paid $500 million for? But the minister says the ship is up there, anchored in Malta because of the winter storms. I'm asking tonight, tell us if this inspection document is true. Tell us if these deficiencies exist in what is supposed to be a brand new ferry. What attention to detail you paid, Minister, and your government. So this is a government-to-government arrangement. As you know, again, in the procurement law, they took that out so they could make their government-to-government arrangements. But even though it's a government-to-government arrangement, it is made with a private company. 1 trip to Australia, boy, and we get in ferries. $500 million. Man, you can imagine if they go back a second time. Can you imagine? Should they decide to make a second trip? Wouldn't be 1 ferry, 2 ferries, might be a whole fleet of ships. They can make these big purchases without the oversight because they failed to implement the procurement law, and now never because they have removed it completely from what was the existing law. So this is what we have under this wicked and shameless government. And the Prime Minister tells us at year end, he says what? The worst is behind us. Prime Minister, are you living in Trinidad and Tobago? Are you for real? Where are you living? The worst, he says, has gone. The worst is behind us, is behind us. And here we are this year. How can the worst be behind us when you want to bring property tax? Property tax is going to affect every single person. Their narrative is, don't worry, you see us, we don't have to pay property tax because we don't own no property. Don't be fooled with your lies. Every single person in this country is going to be affected with the property tax. How? If you own property, obviously. And you remember when we were doing the debate in the Parliament, I asked the minister, I said, you said every structure on your piece of land is going to get a tax. So I asked him, you mean the dog kennel getting a tax? If you have a fowl pen or a fowl coop or a duck pen or whatever you call it, we had to pay tax. The man said yes. Every structure you have is to be taxed. So that's those who have land, occupy land. For those who do not own the land, you will still have to pay the tax if you're a renter. Because when the landlord has to pay the tax, you think he's going to pay it on his own, he's going to increase your rents. And really, already so many persons cannot pay their rents. It's going to cause an increase in rents as well. And if you think you get away because you're not renting, you don't own no land, you don't get away yet. Because every single business that has to pay these taxes will pass the tax on to the consumer. Every single business. So if a man owns a shop, a grocery, whatever it is he owns, and he's selling something from there, he's retailing matters, retailing items, what do you think he's going to do when he has to pay these taxes? He's going to pass that tax on to you. It will be passed on to this property tax. It's extremely complicated. It affects every single citizen. The worst is behind us, Rowley. And you want to bring property tax to increase the burden and the hardship on citizens of our land. I call on the Prime Minister to hold. Do not bring in that dreaded, wicked property tax at this time. Then now, the worst is behind us. Critical foreign exchange problems. Serious forex. Wade spoke about it earlier about the shipping company saying they're not going to accept TT dollars. You have to pay them in the US. So when we can't get the US, the people importing the food and whatever we import, you can't get US because there's such a shortage. What's going to happen? Does it mean we are going to face empty grocery shelves? Because you know what, $5 to $6 billion of our food is imported. Does it mean that we're going to face shortages of medication? We don't produce medication in this country. We have to import it. Already we have shortage to even buy it. Now you're going to have shortage to pay for the shipping. So you want to tell me the worst is behind us, Mr. Rory? Show me how. Tell me how you're going to deal with this to avoid shortages of food, shortages of medication, shortages of essential items that we have to bring in if you don't have the forex. Tell us how you're going to create the forex. The one major foreign exchange earner in our land was the Petrotrin refinery. The major forex earner. Now we have to take forex to buy the fuel from somebody else. We stop refining. So we have to find foreign exchange, which we never had to find before, to buy fuel. You have not told us one way in which you are going to earn more foreign exchange. Because don't make us feel foreign exchange is for people to buy apples and grapes. That's why the minister, laughing, a usual clown that he is, stands up in the parliament in the budget to tell us, from January, no apple and grapes. We're going to put taxes on it. People live for the whole year. They don't eat apple and grapes. And some of us don't even like it. But you make it into a nonsense, ridiculous issue. Oh, foreign exchange shortage, so we're not going to let you all buy apples and grapes. We're going to put a big tax on it. Who are you fooling? Who are you fooling? When you all get the tax exemptions, huge tax exemption, Rowley getting big, finance minister, are you really getting tax exemptions for that luxurious building you're putting up there, what you call duplicitous or multiple family dwellings in one building? Forrest got exemptions from what? For some scan machine. For the life of me, I can't understand why this man recusing himself for a matter before the cabinet to give exemptions. So they give themselves exemptions, but what? It's tax on you, property tax on you, tax on your apple and your grapes, tax on the motor vehicles. As from this month, prices of motor vehicles going up. What is that going to do to the economy? What will that do to the prices of other things? Answer us. And you tell us, bold-faced and brass-faced and lying, the worst is behind us, Prime Minister. The worst is behind us when you intend to tax and borrow and suffer everyone in this country. Job losses, how is the worst behind us? You have not told us one way in which you will increase the number of jobs. On top of that, you lie and hide the statistics about the true amount of job losses in this country since you came into office. And don't tell us it's pandemic. Because hundreds of thousands lost their jobs even before the pandemic. You crashed the economy before the pandemic. The pandemic is now the plaster for every incompetence on your part. Every failure by the Rowley regime. Blame Kamala. And when they're tired, blame pandemic. They have no answers. And you say the worst is behind us. How are we going to create jobs? Tell us in this new year. Don't come with platitudes, the worst behind us. Don't raise a red herring with that helicopter to say we were corrupt. We were not corrupt. It was a proper procurement process went through for that lease arrangement to be entered into. But where's your procurement process? For the ferry, what did you do? One trip to Australia. You know, our commissioner tries very hard. Police, he talks about one shot, one kill. Well, this is one trip to Australia. $500 million of taxpayers' money being spent. More job losses. The energy sector has been decimated. All the plants who have been closed down at Point Lisas. And up to today, we cannot hear what is the end of the patriotic bid for the refinery. Has anyone heard anything? Have they said anything? Nothing. Nothing about the patriotic bid. On the eve of the election, they promised, don't worry, all the promises, PNM promises never materialize. They lie to the country, and they break every single promise that they have. What is the status of the refinery? You promised to reopen the refinery to create back some of the jobs that were lost. So not even that has materialized. Tell us how you are going to deal with the job losses as continue to pile up, continue to increase every day. The worst is behind us. He lies. Promise you, lie. Infrastructure is collapsing everywhere. You saw recently the story where on the road to where was it going to Mayaro? Mayaro. Residents were cut off because the road was so bad. PTSD said, look, we're not going to send a bus. Worse behind us. Well, I hope they have fixed it by now, but that the infrastructure all around us. You see it all the time. People put up pictures. The road is no longer a road, it's a pothole. Pothole after pothole after pothole. Everywhere, infrastructure. The schools, Monilal mentioned, these schools that remain unopened. Vine growing all over it. In state of dilapidation, schools that were nearly complete. There are two in my own constituency, the Shiva Boys College and the Parvati Girls College. You see the structure and you see it is in decay and disarray because since the PNM came in, spite, malice and ill will, they have refused to do anything there. Ramaitra is into reform into schools across the country. And these are the people who stand up and cry and say, oh yes, Kamala, 106 schools you built. Well, tell us where. When we start to tell them there, they never ask again. We put up all the pictures, one after, Alan Karam, thank you. Put up pictures, one after the next of the 106 schools. And they were all over the country. They were not concentrated in UNC constituencies. There's one thing you cannot say about my government. We were fair across the board. We were fair and transparent. So there we are. All around us, things are in decay. No proposals or plans come from the government except to tell us the worst is behind us. And this year, when Minister of Finance gave his budget statement, he said this year, 2021, will be the year for resetting the economy for growth and innovation. Where is the growth? Where's the reset? We are in reverse mode. There's no resetting. Nothing is happening whatsoever. Nothing. And you'll hear them screaming on their platforms. I think they're somewhere tonight. They will try to say what they've achieved. Nothing. You promise local government reform every single year. You hear lie? Lie again. In fact, I think if you go back to 1960, PNM manifestos from 62 coming down the year, every year you will see they're promising local government reform. The only government that did some serious local government reform was the NAR government, which introduced the Municipal Corporations Act for really major reform in local government. But again, this wicked PNM, as soon as they came into power, they did the same thing that they did with the procurement law. They amended the law to remove some of the corporations that the NAR had created. They removed them, reduced them. And I'll share some of that with you. So local government reform is like their recurring nightmare decimal. Every time, and I'm sure this election, we'll hear it again in 2019. Prime Minister Rowley down in Sapara, I say, Lord, Kamala lost Sapara, boy. Thank you, people of Sapara. We made sure that didn't happen. In Sapara, 3-4 times, loafing around, promising the Sapara Corporation. You know what he promised? He promised he'll make them into a borough. You know, I see recently he come back again. He said he wants to make sure Gowanus a city, and he wants to make Sapara a borough. Well, don't get no chain up with that, eh? These people lie, outright lie. Never keep their promises. So local government reform, repeat, ad nauseum, repeat, local government reform. And none has happened. Instead, what they did is, as I say, similar to what they did with procurement, they emasculated the local government law that was passed by the NAR. I'll show you how that happened. So we see now we really need local government reform. We see, for example, that we have inequity and inequality in representation. from corporation to corporation. We have inequality and inequity with respect to resources per corporation. And you have inequity and inequality with respect to the representation by a council. Let's share this with you. I'll need the data to share this with you. So let's look at allocations. Khadija has spoken on this matter several times. In terms of monies allocated, let's look at it. If we look, for example, in the Arima Borough Corporation, their population size is 33,606. Okay? 33,606. They got $82.4 million. This is Arima P&M control. Let's look at Chaguanas Borough. A population of 83,516. Remember the numbers in Arima? 33,606. Chaguanas, 83,516. You know how much money they got? 69.3 million. In other words, Chaguanas got far less money than Arima, even though Chaguanas had a larger population. So it means that in Arima, if you divide the number of voters to the millions given, allocated, it means every single individual would get $2,453 per year. Not in money, but in goods and services. In Chaguanas, each person would get, in goods and services, $830. Is that fair? Can that be allowed to continue? And I'm just giving you the stories the same across the board for all the corporations. In the Chaguanas Borough Corporation, the population is 49,910 more people than Arima. Yet they got $13 million less. It means that every person in Chaguanas Borough receives $1,623 less than a person in Arima. I say not the money, but the goods and services. So it means that in between them, the disparity is almost 300%. The disparity between allocation to Arima, allocation to Chaguanas. So you have, imagine that they are getting 300% more in Arima with less people than the larger Chaguanas. It's the same, Siparia, Mayaro, Princetown, and so on, all receive considerably less money. But let's look at another issue of inequity and inequality. There's been another issue, which is the unequal distribution of burgesses to elected representatives. In 1992, because this is when the Municipal Corporation Act took full effect, local government elections, there were 136 electoral districts in Trinidad. 1992, 136 electoral districts. Tonight we named our candidates for 5 of these 136. In 2016, it was increased to 137. And by the time we got to 2019, it's increased to 139 for the 2019 locals. So from 92, there were 136 districts. 2019 elections, 139, increase of 3. Nothing wrong with that, but watch this. Look at this. In 1992, the electorate for local government in Trinidad was 774,233. By the time we got to the 2019, the electorate was 1.077 million persons. So it had more than doubled. The population for local government voted had more than doubled by the time we got to 2019. And in this year, 2020, for the by-elections, this will not impact so greatly, but we have another local coming, so we really need to reform. 1992, total electorate, 774,233. 2019, 1,077,186 people. So the voting population has grown by more than 300,000 voters between 92 and 2019. The number of councillor seats, now so many more people, what happened? You would expect to get more councillors. For general elections, what did we have? We had more electoral districts. Remember the time when we got 5 more constituencies because of the growth in population? Nothing like that has happened in local. So we find with the local, from 1992 to last year, last 2019 local, only 3 new districts. You have a population, 300,000 more people to vote for local, but you only got 3 more electoral districts, from 136 to 139. They have done nothing to correct this problem. It is worse every year. There is no equity, there is no equality on the workload expected of the councillors. There is no equality of the vote. There is no equality of representation. There is no equity and equality in the allocation of the resources. The number of persons who are represented by a single councillor is vastly different. And yet every councillor gets the same stipend. So for example, a councillor in Point Fortin Borough represents 2,147 voters. When you come to Tunapuna Piarco Corporation, one councillor represents 11,105 voters. You see the inequity, the inequality? And yet they get the same stipend. In other words, each councillor in Tunapuna Piarco represents 4 times more the number of voters than the person down in Point and, for example, also in Arima. So let's give you this representation. Point Fortin in 1992, there were 2,147 electors per councillor. By the time you get to 2019, that remained almost steady at 2,843, and there was no new district in Point Fortin. Port of Spain, 92, 3,453 per electoral district. Representation, 3,151 electors per councillor. But they had a minus population, minus 3,618. No new seat and no reduction in the seats. And the story goes on the same throughout each of them. So you have councillors representing about 2,000 people, as compared to people in Princestown, 7,685. You come to Separa, 7,000. You come to Sama Laventille, 6,000. You come to Tunapuna, 7,000 and more. The number of seats have actually been reduced in Mayaro. They reduced the number of seats in Mayaro. The Mayaro Corporation in 1992 was coming to it. Anyway, they reduced the numbers in Mayaro. It was they reduced it in 1992 by 2019. They took away 4 seats from Mayaro. 4 seats from Mayaro. Even though that electorate had increased by 8,165. Increased, but they reduced the number of seats. So it is very clear there is no equity, there is no equality, and there is, in my respectful view, that there is rank discrimination by this inequality of treatment to these councils by way of the Ministry of Finance and the government. So we will see now, if you take only 2 districts in Tunapuna Piarco, only 2, they have far more voters than Point or Arima, the whole of Point and the whole of Arima. So my dear, what is the international best practice? We look at our constitution, we look at our law, and they say they're doing the right thing according to the law, but it is right on the letter of the law, but not in the intent and spirit of the law. Internationally, the European Commission for Democracy, the Venice Commission, their Code of Good Practice in Electoral Matters and Guidelines, explanatory report, 18 to the 19th of October, advises specifically under the heading Equal Suffrage, as follows. Equal voting power. Seats must be evenly distributed between the constituencies. 1, this must at least apply to elections to lower houses of parliament and regional and local elections. 2, this concept of equal suffrage entails a clear and balanced distribution of seats among constituencies on the basis of one of the following allocation criteria. Population. I just shared with you the population numbers. Number of resident nationals, number of registered voters, and possibly the number of people actually voting. an appropriate combination of these criteria may be envisaged. In order to guarantee voting power equally, the distribution of seats must be reviewed at least every 10 years, preferably outside election periods. When they review, the EBC reviews anything, what do? They shift one PD from here to there. So in San Fernando West for the last general, they shift 3 PDs out of San Fernando East, a PNM stronghold, into San Fernando West. Bordering San Fernando West is Oropouche. Which is it, Rudy? Yours, Oropouche? East or west? Both east and west, look at that. 2 stronger UNC seats, but they didn't take 1 PD from there. They took from where? San Fernando East. So the border of Oropouche East, border of Oropouche West, borders, and on the other side, Pointe-a-Pitre borders. But where they get to take it from? That's their kind of review. Up in Komoto, Manzanar, and Toko, they shift 1 or 2 things here for the general elections. And that's their kind of review. It is very clear that this thing is totally disproportionate and discriminatory to the burgesses and the councillors in many of our districts. I want to tell you, we have been researching, doing the law on, research on the law of that provision in our Constitution which speaks about equality of treatment by a public authority. We are looking at it now based on the fact that we now have another limb in the Constitution to challenge the inequality of treatment by the Ministry of National Security in granting exemptions. We didn't have before. You say, okay, well, you stop this one, you stop that one, but because of the COVID, that is proportionate, that is realistic, okay, disease and death, everybody frightened. But when you come to equality of treatment, that's a totally new ballgame. So we've been looking at that research. There are a lot of cases right up to the Privy Council with this equality of treatment. And we are looking at it in respect of the allocations made to the various regional corporations. And our lawyers, together with myself, we are seeking to challenge the allocation of resources. And the lawyers are also looking at the exemptions and the basis and policy of the ministry in granting these exemptions. So as I move on, close to closing, what is the importance of these by-elections? Why are they important? As I say, many will be feeling election burnout. Many will say, well, what is the point of voting in this? It's not going to change the price of cocoa. But the fact is, these elections will change the level of representation closest to you. Local government and your councils are closest to you, more so than the central government. So your vote is very important. Always remember that if we don't come out to vote for what is right, then our children will have to pay that price. You remember in 1971, there was a no-vote campaign. Allowed the PNM to take every seat. No-vote campaign. What happened? Up to today, we are still facing the consequences of that. They went in and they amended the Constitution. They brought the 1975 Constitution, which really totally created a kind of dictatorship in the central government. They had all the powers to run over rights and trample rights. And they changed the Constitution in a manner, as I say, to have a prime ministerial dictatorship. So this time, don't feel your vote doesn't count. Do not have a no-vote campaign. Do not stay away from the polls. Remember from our history what happens when you stay away. If this party, the PNM, cannot protect your jobs, they cannot ensure your prosperity, they cannot develop your children's future, and they are in central government, how can they serve you in local government? So they might have the state in central government. How can this better serve you for local government? If putting food on your table or ensuring your children have the technology to learn, these are human rights, how can we expect them to maintain your drains and your local issues? You need your candidate there who will be people-centered to look after you. This is an election, as Khadija said, where we must send them a message. We must vote against them because of the hardship and oppression they have caused our citizens. We must say enough is enough to high food prices. We must say no to property tax by voting against them. We must stand up for those who they have blocked out of our country by voting against the PNM. We must stand up against the Petrotrin betrayal by saying no to the PNM. We must stand against the emasculation of the procurement legislation. Vote against the PNM. Above all, these are all issues of peace, bread, and justice. We must vote for peace, bread, and justice by voting for the UNC. So whilst the local elections, they may be, we must never forget the hardship they have caused. In Arima, I ask you to get a UNC councillor in so we can hold that council accountable for hardships they have caused and for transparency in the chartered borough. In Chaguanas, let us ensure we send back Team UNC so the dynamic people-centered representation can continue. In St. Mary's, Hindustan, under the UNC, you have an opportunity and development for all. Ensure a UNC victory. In Diego Martin, it is time to give yourself a chance. How many times you'll continue to put this wicked, shameless government? Look at the roads in Diego Martin. Look at the garbage collection. Garbage collection in Diego Martin has now become collection on the street and on the roadways. In Diego Martin, give yourself a chance. Vote, John Lakis, vote for the UNC. In Point Fortin, you certainly deserve better. For too long, you have been subjected and neglected. This is a time for real representation. Vote for your UNC candidate for Hollywood. Citizens, let us let the PNM know we are not satisfied with their so-called governance. Let us stand up and be counted. Vote for the party with a plan to improve your lives. Let us stand up for bread, peace, and justice. Vote for the UNC, a party that will continue to fight for you. As I close, I remind you, and I want to thank all of you who came out in our internal elections to vote for a new national executive. Thank you for the confidence you have placed in me to lead our party, our great party, and for the rest of the members of the NATEX. Tonight, I want to thank the outgoing General Secretary, Mr. Dave Tancool, and our outgoing PRO, Anita Haynes, now MP. They served us well. We thank them. We wish them well as we go forward. Our party, following upon the NATEX elections, has taken the decision to appoint the new PRO and the new GenSec. As you know, these positions are not elected positions. They are positions that the National Executive names the persons to hold these two positions. The two positions cannot be held by elected MPs or by senators. And so the party is proud to announce that at our last National Executive meeting, we have appointed two loyal soldiers of our party, and they've been fighting with us along the way. Our new General Secretary is Mr. Peter Kanhai. Please congratulate him. And our new PRO is Dr. Kirk Megu. Please congratulate him. We look forward to the team working together. I close by telling you, we got these things from the PNM. We did well in the last elections, maybe not as well as we wanted to or should have, but I want you to not be ashamed and be very proud that our percentage of voters increased from 2015, when it was 39.61%, to 47.09% in 2020, so a percentage increase. The PNM's voter percentage dropped from 51.68 in 15, they dropped down to 49.8. It was a razor-thin result that came in. We gained almost 20,000 new votes compared to 2015 in 2020. And we did not even contest 2 seats, but we gained over 20,000 new votes. Not to mention the fact that we captured a very key marginal seat, Maruga Tableland, taking us up to 19. So we are just a hair's breadth away from governance. Do not despair. Do not let the naysayers make you feel ashamed. We are UNC and we are proud. We are UNC and we are proud. We will continue to fight. We will continue to work for you as we go forward. So I say together we can. I make a call again that all those who wish to work with us, all those who want for us to remove this wicked, shameless government, incompetent government, for those of us who want to make a difference, to bring the change that we need, I tell you, you're welcome. Join us. Contact your local UNC representatives in the constituencies where you are. Don't just send me a message you want to come and be a senator or an MP. Work. Come in and work. All those who want to help, come and work. We have rewarded loyal members of our party, hardworking people in our party. And I say to all those of you sitting on the sidelines, sitting over the fence, come home. Come home. There is room in the house of the rising sun for everyone. Together, let us work to remove the wicked government that we have. And together we say, we are UNC and we are proud. We are UNC and we are proud. God bless you, and I thank you very much.